out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. We are back here with a full house. We have all the boys here. Thomas, welcome back. I know you were feeling a little off last week. Ed, Drew, and for the first time ever, we have an actual bona fide expert with us, Chris Balestri. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I've been listening, and I really like what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to be here.
Now, Chris, I'm pretty sure you can do a better job of telling your story than I can. So share with the people out there a little bit about yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been involved in motorsports for over 20 years now. I started back when I started a lot later when I was a teenager. Started out in karting, grassroots, and slowly worked my way up through the ranks and have been heavily involved in the business ever since. I've raced a variety of championships. Primarily, my main focus has always been professional kart racing, and then made some transitions over to car racing as well, some open wheel, lower formulas. Now, one of my kind of main focal points is the Radical Race Series, which is here in North America. There's 2 championships that we do. But I mean, my main fascination has always been the business side of the sport. The engineering side as well kind of goes hand in hand. And I mean, the amount of stories I could probably tell you, I don't think we'd have enough time today to fill the entire hour. So, but I'm looking forward to, discussing everything motorsports with you guys today. And hopefully I can lend some of my insights and my experiences over the last 2 decades to your show.
You know what, I think this is the perfect episode to have you on because Formula One just released a ton of technical updates on what they're looking forward to the 2026 car. I know you're a big F1 fan, so we'd love to get your thoughts on that in a little bit. In the meantime, obviously you said you started off karting in your teens. What led you into motorsport in the first place?
Yeah, I still think about it sometimes just periodically throughout the day. It still pops in some of those earliest memories. I can remember way back 1989 was some of the very first memories that I had. Nigel Mansell and the Ferrari 640. I used to watch it with my grandfather. A bit of my Italian heritage kind of yielded me the opportunity to get involved on the Ferrari side of things. And I mean, I had such a fascination when I was younger, and it essentially expanded from just watching it on TV and then being able to attend races when I was quite young. And we also had some family friends as well that were involved that were actually marshals at the time through my dad. And we had gone out to races out in Motorsport back in the early 90s, 1990, 91, Trans Am series, sports car runoffs, whatnot. And the bug was there, and that was it. And I felt this is something I had to do, such a strong emotional connection to it. And being able to try and get involved at an early age was a bit of a challenge. Obviously, I mean, we've all heard it before. Financially, it's very difficult to get involved into the sport. But slowly, little by little, we kind of found a bit of a plan a little bit later throughout the path of it all and getting involved in karting. And you know what? I mean, I can really attest my interest into it again is just from my grandfather had kind of got me started in it. And then my dad, family, friends. And then from there, we ended up expanding into those grassroots days when we got into karting. And it's kind of an interesting story because I didn't really start as young as I should have. I mean, any 5 and 6 year old, and I'm going straight to Formula One is the first thing out of my vocabulary back in the day. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case, and it took a lot longer at that point just because of those financial struggles that we had at that point, and just trying to actually get a go-kart, for goodness sake. It was probably the most difficult part of it all. But we had started out. Eventually, there was an opportunity where out in Hamilton, Ontario, they had a local kart track out there that was actually starting like an arrive and drive 4-cycle club. And it kind of gave us an opportunity to get our foot in the door at a lower end price point. And we had gone out, and I still remember to this day, pouring rain, of course, worst conditions possible, and jumping into your kart for the very first time and being able to just take it all in after all those years of trying to make it to that initial point. And we finally made it. And there I was hammering it out in a four cycle cart going around in the rain, and times were getting faster and faster. And before you know it, they really liked what they saw in that little tryout period and jumped on board and started doing local club racing at that point. So
That's
So how
amazing.
does one go from karting into like open wheel racing or like car racing and the Radical series? Like, what does that kind of transition look like?
yeah, it was a long journey, and I think, you know, those first initial years was really tough in trying to actually understand, not so much on the sporting side, but the business side. I think that was some of the biggest hurdles initially, and trying to get sponsorship, you know, as a younger kid, trying to knock on doors at that point and trying to get, you know, financial support was really, really tough. But I mean, and that's the way that goes even to this day. I mean, you're going to start out at that lower level, and to make those progressions at that point, it came down to really pounding the pavement and getting as much support as possible through family connections, family friends, friends of friends, and before you know it, trying to tell everybody and anyone that would ever lend you their ear of what you're up to try and actually support you. And for those initial 4 or 5 years, that's exactly what we did. And we finally started getting that extra investment and then family support. And we had done karting for a number of years and then started getting pretty serious. And this was in the mid 2000s, around 2006, 2007, when at the time they had a pretty competitive feeder series, which was Formula BMW. And it was originally based in Europe. And they started having a North American series at that point. And that was kind of my real first point of trying to get my foot in the door with a junior formula series, because they had those opportunities available for young karters. But I still remember even, you know, emailing every team I possibly could on the roster that raced in the series. It was so challenging, and I had gone face to face and had meetings with team owners, and they would simply look at you. And the first question I've always got right off the bat was, "How financially stable are you and your family?" It's that cutthroat. And then at that point, you start trying to get into testing, and you'd pay for that track time for those test days and start to try and showcase your talent. And then from those junior formula was also the racing school avenue that you could also take as well too, which I had some opportunity to do. So that was out in Motorsport, which is still there to this day. It was a Bridgestone Racing Academy. Yeah, so you could get your qualifications for your licensing, and at that point, it became, you know, to run a season of Formula BMW at the time was $200,000 plus for the season. And that's covering engineering staff and all the expenses and crash deposits and so on and so on. So from there, you know, being able to try and get in there, it never really materialized into full seasons, but there was always opportunities to have seat time and testing and trying to get involved into races at that point. And I still kept going back into the karting world because, you know, and this is something we maybe could talk about a bit later, but the karting world is such a competitive environment, even compared to car racing, because of its speed, of its physical, you know, challenges that it has. And I ended up contesting some serious championships in the Canadian Karting Championships in between that as well, and then tried to get as much test drives as possible. And then we had other opportunities where there were sports cars. The Radical started coming into Canada at that point. And then we had the opportunity to go and try and test and get as much track time on that as possible as well. So, I mean, I've kind of become more of a glorified test driver at this point. And that's kind of the route and exactly where I am to this day, being able to drive as much as I can and being able to be involved in as much seat time as possible.
So you know, you talked about something about the financial aspect of getting into racing, and it made me think of a conversation we had last week where we were talking about some of the drivers who were currently on the Formula One grid, some who obviously were very financially sound and made it, and others who might have had to work a little bit harder, maybe had a little bit of chip on their shoulder. I'm not going to name any names right now. Going through that process, you know, early on, even at the karting days, like trying to find funding.
Yeah.
Did you find that same effect? Do you find a little bit of chip with there, a little bit of like, you know, hard feelings towards those kids that come in and just like pay to play right away?
I have plenty of stories. I think I still remember when it was more of a local team for us that we were a part of. So they were actually called First Kart North America, and they were a decent sized team. But when you would show up when you first start with your own little trailer hooked up to your SUV, and even to this day, there's still these multi-million-dollar setups for two kids that run two go-karts. I mean, we're talking rigs, hydraulic hoists, leather couches and lounges, engineering debriefs at such a grassroots level. And I think, yeah, it is a bit discouraging to see, but it's also giving you an opportunity to, I am going to say, toughen you up in a sense, to realize that kind of is the way that club per se, and that's how they operate. If the money's there, they're going to use it. But I even remember the Latifis from Nicholas Latifi back when that would race locally. I mean, beautiful setups. They would have professional, mechanics that would essentially watch and babysit their kids for the day, while they're at the kart track, because financially they had that opportunity, right?
So, like, the difference between the haves and the have-nots in terms of, like, the karting world and in the lower racing series and stuff like that, like, there's a big gap. Like, it becomes quite obvious when you hit the track, like, what that gap looks like.
Yeah, and I think that was more so in the 2000s, and things now have really changed. And you can even see this right into Formula One now, where there's a lot more proper organization, or at least so they say, and so they have kind of, promoted it that way, where they've kind of divided more the initial grassroots and semi-pro and professional series at that point, so that you can kind of not have that essential mishmash, right? And there's more of a development program in place these days than there was, say, like I say, in the early 2000s, late 90s, where everybody was kind of, here's one series, pool you all together, hope for the best. Whoever's the most financially sound is the one that kind of survives the game at that point. And I think even now, looking at some of the series that are local within Canada, there are some really strong opportunities now for drivers to kind of jump on board these series, to start to develop themselves at a early age professionally, and then springboard out to more professional series, say stateside or even off into Europe as well too, right?
So before we get into to F1 and start really diving into some of like the nuances of like the 2024 season and what's going on with the updates for the 2026 regs, what do you have on deck for like your racing future? Like, are you going to stick around with what you're doing? Did you want to kind of get into more of like the business aspect of it, or like, team management, team sponsorship? Like, what kind of avenue did you want to stick with going into?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had opportunities to help other drivers. I've done some coaching. Like I say, my main goal right now is to actually go back full time into a championship. So basically between 2015 and now, so we're running on about 9 years or so. That was when I actually had run my last full championship season in contention for a full season. So I'm looking at now getting back into a full-time season. I've looked at the Radical series. I've had some involvement with them. I'm even looking at professional karting series at the full national level as well too. And I think right now it's just kind of getting the word out there a little bit, and I'm available. And trying to put the resume out there in a sense to different teams or people who might be listening as well. And I think, like I say, there are a lot more opportunities now. There's even been some discussion as well too. I've been trying to get my foot in the door for the Toronto Indy this year, because the Radical Series is actually running in conjoined with the Marble Cup, which is a Radical Series in the States, and they come here and they have like a merged race up here in Toronto. And then they have shared points. And that was something that I was looking to get involved in too, and trying to gain some additional sponsorship for either this year or next as well too, because they've been second year now. So it sounds like something that's going to be a permanent support series for the next little while. So yeah, that's kind of what's on my agenda for the next year out.
You guys hear that? Balestri's back. We need some money.
I hope so.
Let's get this guy some money.
So I do have a question before we move on.
Shake my can.
I do have a question before we move on to Formula One, somewhat related. What is the most direct path to Formula One for someone who is in their late 30s, early 40s with zero racing experience?
Asking for iRacing?
iRacing?
Well, unless you know some very wealthy sheiks, kings, or any of the above that have
Hit
deep
up
pockets.
Christian Horner's DMs. Is that the way in?
Yeah. I would say iRacing is probably the best bet at that point. Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying is there's still a
You're
chance.
SOL, buddy. Yeah, you're SOL.
Oh,
buddy.
there's always a chance.
There's always a
always a
chance.
Million talk.
We have to be
Has
positive.
anybody seen the Driven movie with Stallone?
Yes.
Yes, I
As
have.
horrible as that was, yeah.
Yeah.
There's hope. There's hope for the senior
go.
citizens out there.
Hey,
Yeah.
I see Brad Pitt in an F1 car recently. All right, so you still got some
Yeah.
time. He's 60.
If Brad can do
Yes.
it, anyone can do it.
That's it.
That's coming out very soon, apparently.
So moving on to Formula One, Chris, we're about a third through the season. We just had the Canadian Grand Prix. We've had a bunch of different winners over the last few races, which has kind of brought some interest back to the series in this year, and maybe made us think that it's not going to be a complete walk away from Max and Red Bull. What have been your initial thoughts over the first few races?
I think we're hitting a point now in the regulations where everybody's kind of becoming more on a level playing field. I mean, we've seen this in past season. I mean, I think back to other seasons in the 2000s and even Mercedes dominance as well too. Once the regulations kind of mature and everybody catches up at that point, you're going to see more and more competition. Whereas Red Bull had kind of mastered that, earlier. Now, I think, McLaren, I'm really excited to see what they're bringing to the table. I think Zach Brown has turned into a machine in recruitment and HR master of getting everybody on board. The right people is what makes a team, and that's true from karting all the way right up to Formula One. But I think what's going to happen now, going into the new regulations, it's going to be everybody kind of back to zero again. Whoever is going to initially win that development race will be dominant for a period of time. And then we're going to start again. And we saw this 2021 at the end of that championship at the peak at that regulation. And then we're going to be now going into this finish this phase and then on to the third. So I think it's in a really good place. And commercially, I mean, the popularity is still there. It's storming. Hopefully it keeps going, but we've had some discussions in the racing world. Every bubble will pop and have its day. So I hope we ride the wave for as much as possible and kind of keep that generalized population interested in the sport.
So I think you hit on it because we're starting to create some parity in technical specs and abilities between the cars now that we're a few years in, and we are a year and a half away from them changing again. And as I alluded to earlier, Formula One just released some of the updated technical directives for the new cars. We already knew that the engines were going to be significantly different in terms of like their ratio of internal combustion to the battery power. What are your initial thoughts on the aerodynamic technical regulations that they're proposing for 2026?
Yeah, so I think that the regs, you know what? I don't know if I like the names. Let's start there. So they got this like X mode and Z mode. Like whatever happened to Y? Can we just talk about like what's going on? And like ultimately too, like the X mode is what everyone's got these modes. So it's not like anything special. So like is Z mode when your car is normal? And then X mode, because like, do you constantly drive around in X mode and then you press a button and it's Z mode? Or like, I don't actually fully understand like how this is all going to play out. And is it going to be Z or Z? Because I know we got a huge American audience and they're going to want to call it Z mode, which I think sounds a little bit cooler.
Also sounds German. It's the mode.
Yeah, it's Z mode.
Z mode.
Yeah. But I kind of get down with the whole active aero thing. You know what? It's going to be one of those like, it all looks good on paper, but like, what's the reality going to look like? What's, when the actuality of this kind of stuff happening and like you being able to press this Z mode and then all of a sudden you get some extra battery power because we're now at a 50-50 split for battery and combustion and you just get to keep the power longer. So like, I'm just very interested to see in terms of like what tracks are going to have it on what straights. Is that going to be super weather dependent now because all of a sudden, it starts to rain halfway through a Grand Prix and like, we just don't know what any of this stuff looks like yet. And like when this goes into actual play, like I just want to make sure that like no one gets hurt. it's gonna be a mess. It could be an absolute disaster. Like they have no idea what this is gonna look like, and like, are they gonna add more quote unquote like DRS zones or active aero zones or whatever they're gonna call it? I just think it's so far in its infancy, and it's only a year and a half away that like I don't know how these F1 teams are prepping for it. Like I know they're all making their new engines right now, but like how else can they prep? I know Adrian Newey's head spinning right now, and I'm just curious to see like what the other teams are trying to do to figure this stuff out.
Well, I agree with you in terms of like how it's so confusing, but, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, because we do have an actual expert in here. I think they run on X mode, and the Z mode or Z mode is the one that's almost like push to pass or the old curse system from back in the day. I don't think there will be any detection points. I think it would be depending on how much energy they're able to like generate for the MGUK side and of the engine, and then that's where it kind of like begins the. It's up to the discretion of the driver as to when they're going to use the switch from X mode to Z mode, and then using it in different areas of the track, and having that decision and not being confined into a DRS detection mode and then a DRS straight. So it's like you're the only time you can actually do the overtakes when you have DRS. But the main thing I think that a lot of drivers, a lot of manufacturers are being worried about is the amount of speed that they're going to carry. There's been a bunch of let's say comments that they might even go down to the speeds of F2, or they're not going to be as competitive. But then again, like we all said that during the reg change in 2014, then 2021, and then this time again. So it really depends, as what has Chris has said, is that depends on how the teams actually do respond and how things are going to be developed for each of the teams. I personally like it because it's a shorter car, a lighter car. You get more racing out of that from my point of view.
But like an arguably shorter car. Like we're talking like centimeters here. Like they measured it in millimeters because it's so small and they wanted to put a bigger number. So like, you see them and you're like, okay, this is a change. I get it. They are smaller, a little bit more nimble, that kind of, but like, are they? Is Monaco going to be any better? I don't know.
It's so much in its infancy as of right now. I don't know what to expect. As Ed and Drew said, there's so many what ifs, like the whole speed, the whole DRS zones. If they're even going to go to F2 speeds, I read that too. They're going to be more competitive, easier to overtake, but then again, they're going to carry way more speed. So is there going to be a reduction in speed? It's so many unknowns, so many things in their infancy. I do hope for the best that it is actually going to be a little bit more competitive than what it is now. Hopefully we are going to see more interesting overtakes and actually some more interesting battles from way back in the den almost, because right now it's a lot of the races that I'm seeing there, for example, if Max is first, he basically stays first and there's not much change. So I'm hoping to see more of the changes if the new regs come in.
Yeah, I you know what? I think these are all fantastic points. I know there were some discussions about concerns about straight line speed versus cornering speeds with the new regulations was kind of the big talking point, where excessive speeds on a straightaway versus how much you'd actually have to slow the car down mid-corner exit and so on. I mean, I go back to older races and kind of in comparison, it's going to be those first 5 to 6 races in those new regulations, and they will figure it out. But there's going to be a lot of modification, I feel, with this. And I mean, as the regulations as a whole, I'm not personally, as a Formula One fan and as someone involved in motorsports, I've never been a fan of gimmicks. And I mean, whether you want to call push to pass or whatnot, I mean, IndyCar has done that now for a period of time where there's so many seconds of that push to pass and so on. I mean, it's not artificial racing per se, but there's so many extra assistants in that point. I'm more of a purist in the sense that, sometimes you just like seeing guys going full out and driving it right to the limit. But I mean, of course, there's also energy conservation in mind now, and certain regulations have changed to reflect all that. So I'm really curious to see how it's going to go, but it's going to be either one or two teams are going to nail it for the first 5 events. But in terms actually the sizing point that was just discussed, I'm glad to see things are getting tinier a little bit. I think, I know you guys, there was some discussion about some of the previous races at like Monaco, for example. You know, everything is so large now. I mean, even if you look at onboard footage and you know, how nimble and, you know, diverse a car could be at a track now, it's just not there. And I think that decrease in size is a positive step, at least kind of going back to some of those original fundamentals. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. It could still go a little smaller in my opinion, but I think overall it's a step in the right direction.
You know, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was having a similar thought over the last couple of days when I was thinking about this conversation and the updates that are happening. And just to preface this, all these updates are just proposed at this time. I think they're still going through some rounds of consultation until everything is kind of locked in for 2026. But similar to yourself, I felt like, are we going too far in terms of, you know, the gamification of motorsport? Right, you talk about, you know, all the movable aero. You talk about like the push to pass, the DRS. You know, some other. I think there's other movable aero that's going to happen. You know, going into braking zones. You know, things opening and closing. Do you lose some of that purity? And is the goal of Formula One to have the most technically advanced cars, you know, at the cost of maybe pure racing, or is it to really have the best drivers race some amazing cars in a very competitive environment? Because if you have all these assists, to your point, are you losing some of that pure racing? And is that really what Formula One is about? Or is it just kind of the new generation of fan where, you know, they grew up racing on PlayStations and they had all these, you know, it's kind of like a video. It becomes more and more gamified, in my opinion, as you have all these different systems. And I was thinking back to, I don't know if any of you watched the 24 Hours of Le Mans over the weekend. And obviously, extremely technical cars, right? You have the different classes. It's a different race in terms of the endurance and amount of cars on track and things like that. But, you know, I thought the racing in this particular one was extremely entertaining. And it was close throughout all the classes. And you don't have those same moving parts. So I'm just wondering if we're losing a bit of that purity, as Chris mentioned, in Formula One, and that raw skill, which really is going to allow you to win versus just waiting for a straight, hitting your button, and because you have more battery left or more whatever, that you're gonna make that pass.
I'm gonna put another caveat on that too, and like, or is it just about raw entertainment? Right? Like, is Liberty Media kind of stepping in and with the FIA and just saying, like, is it not about the pure racing or the push to pass or the gamification or any of that kind of stuff? Or is it, what can we do to get more eyeballs to make more money? Like, is that, like, what's the end goal? You know, like, obviously there's got to be some of that involved, but like, you know, I personally think like the further you start to get away from some of that pure racing, that raw racing, even without the gimmicks, like, you know, they brought in the DRS because there wasn't enough overtakes, right? So, you know, with the new regulations, they're obviously assuming that there's not going to be as many overtakes. That's why they're doing this whole ZX, you know, push pass thing. So ultimately, like, they just have to make this more entertaining, or at least entertaining enough that people want to watch, right? Like, Drive to Survive is going to die if people start, you know, falling away from F1 as a whole. And you know, now they've spent all this money in Miami and all this money in Las Vegas, and, you know, there has a business side to this that needs to be accounted for. And with all the money that goes in, the sponsorships and all that stuff, and the televised, and there's so many wheels that have to be spun by the money generated by Formula One, that I think that entertainment value has to supersede most of this.
You know, we've talked about that a lot, right? The balance between, you know, sporting value and entertainment value in Formula One, and where that balance lies right now. And with Liberty, you know, and those big races in Vegas and Miami, and, you know, all those big American markets where they put on a big show, it seems to be leaning towards entertainment. But I guess the question is, can purer motorsport be entertaining? Chris, can it be? Is it? Can it appeal to the masses?
Oh, there is a solution to it, but
Oh,
you're
perfect.
fighting.
What is it?
Yeah, can
You're
we just have
fighting.
that? Just tell us now so we can sell it to Liberty real quick.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
done. We'll make a business proposal. We'll all be rich by tomorrow. No, look. I think going back to the last time they did the regulation change, just before they switched over to the regs that we have now. Think about how entertaining that season was. And that season was the season that got everybody on board with the Netflix craze. And I think you're constantly the solution is to separate engineers from commercial rights, and that's not going to happen. You're constantly fighting the two. And to be honest with you, I think if they had left the regulations as they were, or say now in this era, give it one more year and you're going to have maybe two more teams catch up to what Red Bull and McLaren are doing right now. Your ratings will go up because you're going to have closer racing. You're going to have more intense battles on track. But on the engineering side, what's relevant? Environmental concerns, big thing, right? Electric motors, so on and so on. And so it's that constant thin line by trying to appease both sides. And I think they're trying to walk that fine line. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think we all want to see really close racing that's clean and professional and that has like really, storylines and good content behind it all. But I mean, stop changing the regulations so much and more refine the regulations is kind of, I always use the Porsche analogy as a brand, right? Think of the Porsche brand. They have not really changed their engineering outlooks for decades. They constantly just add little bits of there you go. Edward's got his little Porsche diecast. Adding those components and modifying and just improving what needs improving. But when you look at it as a whole, the fundamentals have not really truly changed that much from those initial concepts. So I think, they just need to walk a really thin line and not change as much and don't throw as much gimmicks at it. And the racing will evolve on its own and come to a point of interest for everybody if you leave it be.
I couldn't agree more on this one because there has been some talks that they might actually bring back the V8s because of the new fuels that are coming back, or rather not the new fuels that are coming back, but the new synthetic fuels that they're trying to develop. And can you imagine going back to like the early 2000s with just like that sound, pure racing, no F-duck, no curves, no nothing, just like straight up racing. Like that's what we need. Like I think to the point what Drew was saying, like the entertainment value, there's drama in there, but if you have like even tighter racing, and then just all of the crashing is probably going to be a part of that too. But it's just like if you have that tight racing between all the teams, and can you imagine Haas taking it to Red Bull or something like that? Like that would be so controversial for people who are like watching and following right now. Within the next few years, Haas would be destroying the entire field. It would be unfounded, and it will be like that will have so much entertainment value. And then for the race purists or the actual enthusiasts, they'll see the engineering side just like focusing on giving the drivers as much as they can, but without the gimmicks that we're talking about. And just like bringing it back to the old days, bringing it back to, when things were not that safe, but the speeds that they were carrying, the battles. Oh my God. Like if we get that back, I'm sure Liberty Media is going to rake more cash, get more people to watch, and I'll be happy for all of us as well.
I don't know if you guys saw my post earlier on Instagram, but did you guys hear that they're hosting an F1 race at the Eminem concert this year?
Very funny, Drew. Very funny.
Good one.
I do have one more question regarding technical regs, specifically for Chris before we move on. What's your opinion of homologation within Formula One specifically? Do you think it has a place? Do you think it could benefit the series? Or do you think it's just like all out innovation between teams and that's kind of what it's there for?
Well, I mean, yeah, Formula One, I mean, that's what it's always been about. It's a manufacturer's championship with a driver's championship. If you want more homologation, go to IndyCar. Go to spec series type racing. Yes, it can be more competitive, but again, fighting between those worlds, commercial engineering, and that's what Formula One's all about, right? I think you need those manufacturers to keep it relevant to markets out there, such as automotive brands, technology, engineering. Spec series can only go so far. That's more for here's your car, here's your engines, here's the regulations that you can stay within. Go racing as hard as you can. Right. I personally think that should stay as is, but at the same time, again, walking that thin line and keeping the attraction for manufacturers as well. And, even what Edward was talking about too, I just have to make one point going slightly back a bit on those regulations. I don't understand why it's such a crazy concept with not having electric starter motors and bioethanol fuel. I mean, IndyCar has been using ethanol fuel since the 80s, and Europe has always been more on, heavy lead gasoline kind of concepts. The technology's there, and I think it could definitely be used to an advantage, and that's that tweaking, but not going so far, right? But anyway, back to Walker's point, yeah, absolutely. I think it should still stay as a manufacturer's championship. And keep everything as is in that department.
Amazing. We have our first guest ever here, which is very exciting. And so we thought it would be fun to do a quick roundup of favorites. So we're going to go through a few categories. You're going to tell us your favorites. And I feel like it would be fun for everyone to participate.
Oh,
so,
hey, let's
go. I'm going to throw, there you go. No prep for everyone else. Well, no prep for anyone, really.
Yeah.
Really quickly, your favorite F1 track, Drew, you go first.
Spa,
Thomas?
I'm going to go with Monza.
Okay. Ed?
Red Bull Ring.
Oh, best
Chris?
for last. Imola.
Imola? I'm going to go with Suzuka. I could have taken Spa as well, but I like Suzuka. Favorite car? Let's go road car first, and then let's go road car. Drew, favorite road car? I don't think we've ever asked these questions.
Ooh, I'm going to go with the E63 as.
Okay. Very nice. Thomas?
Favorite road car as in like any road car?
Why you ask the questions, man? Just answer the first. Fucking Christ, man.
McLaren F1.
No. McLaren F1.
That's not a road. I'm talking about like an average guy. Whatever. Do your thing.
No, Drew, I didn't put those rules on there.
Production car.
Yeah.
No, I don't even think we need production car.
Okay.
Just any car. Choose it
car on
really
the
quickly.
planet.
Guys, you make this so difficult.
Anything
Just
with 4 fucking
car,
wheels,
man.
Anything with 4 fucking wheels.
It could have 3 wheels. I don't even care.
A fucking airplane. It could be a. The fuck are we talking?
Cessna.
Tough crowd.
Just went off the rails so fast.
Okay, let's bring it back. Tomas, go. Favorite
You
car?
already did.
E26 M1 BMW.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. Oh, 996 GT3 RS.
Okay.
Oh,
Chris?
really? That was exact. Edward and I are now best friends. That's the exact car that is the exact car I was going to say. I'm always kind of been a Porsche guy at heart, so yeah.
Very cool. I'm going to go with 996 GT2 just because. Why not? I'm going to change it up. Favorite racing movie, Drew?
I'll tell you what it's not. It's not Ferrari. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Man, that was
kind of it's a bit of a sleeper.
Let's go with Baby Driver.
That's not a racing movie, and B, that was my answer.
It's not a race. What a good movie. I watched it recently and I thought it was quite
such a good movie.
It's such a good flick. Yeah, I'm sticking with
great.
It. Whatever. Sorry, Walker.
That was my bit. Oh, whatever.
Wow.
Thomas, favorite racing movie?
Cars.
All right. Okay. All right.
Rush.
Rush.
Yeah.
Mine's going to be Grand Prix with James Gardner. late 1960s. That's, if you want to see Grand Prix racing back when, that's amazing film.
That brings it back,
and someone that's in a media world as well too, for being so involved in film and market.
That's a massive
cinema.
classic. I never thought that you would even bring that up, but that's great.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Despite my objection, I'm still going to go with Baby Driver. Let's go through a couple more here. Favorite? Okay, let's do it this way. Sorry, Drew, I know you said no swearing, but we're going to do fuck, marry, kill.
Ooh, let's do
Drivers on the grid currently. Drew, you go first.
Fuck. Lando Norris. He looks quite feminine. Marry Lewis. He's got the most money, and kill Sargent because no one would miss him.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh. Chris is regretting coming on here immediately.
Yeah.
I'm having a great time. I'm loving this.
All right, Thomas. Fuck, marry, kill, buddy.
Valtteri Bottas.
Of
Charles
course.
Leclerc.
Of course.
Of course. And Sargent as well.
Okay.
Oh, go for it.
I would go with Leclerc. Oh no, reverse. My bad. George Russell, Leclerc, and Stroll. Get out of Formula One, please. Get out of Formula One. Oh my God. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No. I was going to actually say one of those as well. My point of purists: Piastri, Alonso, and Stroll. And the reason I just have to make one quick point: Piastri, he is the 1990s today.
Okay.
Yes. I agree.
He's also an Aussie, so he's probably down for anything.
Oh yeah.
Mark Webber is his manager.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he is. He is.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go Alonso, Lewis, and I'm going to do Gasly a solid and pick Ocon.
Poor Ocon.
Poor Ocon. That's an interesting take because I don't feel like any of us have shared that sentiment. Why poor Ocon?
You know what? I think he's kind of shot himself in the foot, but also too because of the tools that he's had to work with at that point. And I think when you're having two French drivers in a French team that has never been proven to work in the past, and I think he's just kind of some bad timing in terms of where he should have landed and whatnot. And I mean, he's kind of always been passed up, I feel, for somebody that was just a little bit better, right? I mean, he's still a race winner at the end of the day. I mean, that's more than a lot can say. But I think he is kind of his own victim in some sense of how he perceives teammates and how his position in the team and whatnot. So,
and we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. We've got a couple other things to go through. But Chris, tell us, what are you up to? What's coming up next? Where can people find you? Where can we stalk you on track?
Yeah, you know what? I'm always at a local race event. I was just at Motorsport just a few days ago doing some karting testing. I actually have some plans to do some more of that. There's been some grumblings going on. I'm potentially maybe going to be jumping into another Canadian national karting event in August. The Honda Indy locally in Toronto is coming up, so I'll be there as well. You can find me online, my website, ChristopherBalestri.com. Even Instagram, feel free to drop a hello. Always happy to meet fellow fans of motorsport. And yeah, so there's definitely some events on the horizon that I'm trying to put together right now. And it's going to be a busy summer and busy 2025 as well. A lot of preparation this year for next.
Amazing. We'll be sure to link all that stuff in the show notes so people can find you easily.
Awesome.
Before we wrap up, I feel like I would be remiss to go back to our favorite game with a guest this time. We've never done this with a guest. Chris, I don't know if you've ever listened to an episode all the way to the end, if you've had the endurance.
I have.
And I don't blame you if you haven't, because it can be brutal sometimes. But we do like to end with this game called Name That Sponsor. It's really, really simple. I'm going to name 3 sponsors. Each of you have to guess which car it's on, like Formula One team it sponsors, and what that company does, like what the purpose of the company is. Okay. All right. This isn't a race. We all get a guess. I have a score sheet. I'm keeping score. It's been a few weeks, so we might be a little rusty. I mean, usually we're terrible at this game, but
and by
we'll see.
Interesting.
All of us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't participate because I'm the host, but.
And if you're
The rest
not
of you are
sure
garbage.
about the industry, just say logistics. It's the common answer with everyone else. It's logistics.
Sounds like pub quiz night.
Very similar. So I've got a couple of softballs in here. We should be able to like put some points on the board. Hopefully. Okay. The first one is Tudor. First brand is Tudor. Drew, you want to start us off?
Is that TUDOR?
TUDOR.
Ha. Seen it. Recognize it. Can't place it. I'm going to go with Tudor is going to be on Alpine, and we are some sort of SaaS company.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Thomas?
I was going to say Alpine as well. I was going to say like something with cryptocurrency exchange, something like that.
Wow, you guys suck. Ed?
Watch company. Tudor Black Bay 58. Let's get it straight. That's my favorite watch, by the way. And I would say Aston Martin.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, it's from what I know, a watch company as well. I believe Aston is the one from what I recall. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm right with you on that one, Ed.
Okay, so Ed, Chris, watch company, and they are with Visa, RB, Cash App, Running Bulls, something like that.
That's
Okay,
right.
V-Carb.
That's right.
That's
That's
right.
close, that's close.
V-Carb, also known as V-Carb. Second is Armorall.
Oh.
Armorall. Drew?
Armorall. Okay, let's go. Armorall. They're an automotive protective company. They do wipes, cleaners, etc. And they are going to be on Haas.
Okay.
I'm going to say Aston Martin, same as Drew said, car protective company, wipes, sprays, that stuff.
Same. Protective solutions and whatnot. But I would think it would be easy for them, for their color to be matched up with McLaren because they're also orange or papaya. So I'll say McLaren.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, that one I saw recently at a PR event. So Armorall, obviously care, protection, leather wipes, whatnot, glass cleaner. Red Bull, I believe, Checo has some involvement with Armorall.
Well done. And the rookie gets both of them.
Oh my
gosh. Red Bull and, wipes. We all know what it is.
This is embarrassing.
Okay.
This is very embarrassing.
This is trying to punch his tickets and never come back again. Eh? Okay, I see how it is.
I mean, I did mess up Aston Martin, so yeah.
We mess up all of them.
It's all of them, all the time. Go.
Last one. Okay. Last company is 3D Systems.
Oh.
3D Systems.
I'm going to go with the Kick Sauber Stake F1 racing team, and they make like if a company needs like a 3D model built out like for like interactive kind of AR kind of stuff.
I was going to say same thing, like 3D modeling company makes a model or a part or whatever. I was going to say Aston Martin.
I would say 3D modeling, but CAD design, more of like an industrial / architectural point of view. And I would go with Haas.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Sound to say that it is 3D modeling or like CAD based software, like Edward was saying. I'm with him on that one. I think I've seen this on McLaren for some reason. I don't know. I could be wrong. Apparently, I'm watching the racing more than I'm watching the sponsors. So,
How impressive would it be if Chris got two right?
Very.
He didn't, but it would have been impressive.
Wow.
So I'm going to give you all a point for the 3D rendering, printers, software, et cetera, et cetera. And they're on Alpine.
Oh.
So there you have it.
One of the two sponsors left, eh? Okay.
I don't know how updated
Maybe
my
they'll
list
feel
is, so
sorry.
we'll see.
Maybe they'll feel sorry for me and sponsor me next year.
There we go.
There we go. So, boys, that was it. That was a lot of fun. Chris, it was a pleasure having you with us.
Likewise.
Tons of great insight and expertise, and not something we're used to around here. So thank you for gracing us with your presence, and we'd love to have you back. I'm sure whenever you're into it.
I would be honored,
and
yeah, thank you so much.
Boys, any last words?
Nah, you know how we do it. Like, subscribe, rate, follow, do all that stuff. We're gonna make sure that that we get Chris in the Discord, and if you guys want to reach out and ask any questions, he'll be in there. But like Walker said earlier, we got all of Chris's ad information in the Discord and in the show notes. So if you guys want to get a hold of him, we'll put his contact information below to reach out. So that's it.
Yeah,
All right,
and
guys,
on the Discord too, don't forget, Drew, Mailbox Box. You know, the race is coming up real soon. If you guys have any questions, get on that Discord, get on the server Mailbox Box, and ask your questions, and we'll try to answer you guys on the next episode.
True. Also, we got some merch too. Chris, what size is your t-shirt, buddy? We'll get you a t-shirt done up for you.
Medium.
Okay. You and Walker sharing those mediums, eh? Oh my god!
Yeah, actually,
Someone's
believe it
gotta
or
do
not, I can still squeeze into a small. So if you want to look extra,
No doubt.
We're not going to put that on the podcast. We're not going to let anyone know that. But yeah, so we got merch. If you guys are interested, just drop us a line at f1truenorth@gmail.com, and we can get you guys ordered and get you guys in some F1 True North gear. What up?
Cool. All right, guys. It's been fun.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
It's lights out and away we go.